the outside world. But for a moment, I just want to welcome everybody on this beautiful day to join us. And I'm so honored that I get to work with, or play with, as I like to say, with my mother, Nola. And she's going to be taking over the meeting here in a few minutes to share a lot. But to start with, I wanted to just ground ourselves here, if you'll play with me for a few minutes with just using your breath and just breathing with me into this moment. And the way I'm welcoming everybody is to just center into your own self with a few deep breaths. And that's first to start with taking in a deep breath through your nose for 4 counts, and then out your mouth for 4 counts. And we're going to do it 4 times. And I want you to think about what you're grateful for about yourself as you're breathing. So if you'll do it with me, take a breath in and let your belly expand with going through your nose. And then out your mouth, you can make a sound. We're going to do that 3 more times. In through your nose and out through your mouth. And we're going to do it a third time. Welcome, Clary. And out your mouth. And one last time, thinking about what you're grateful for. And out your mouth. And just really be grateful that you made it here today, and feel your feet, feel grounded, because we're going to really sink into the wonderfulness about ourselves and the gifts that we have to share in the world. And I just briefly want to say that years ago in college, I wrote a paper. Hi, Clary, can you hear? Everybody, I will just chat for a second, and then I'll have Nola be introducing herself. I just really wanted to talk about all of our different bodies that we're going to tune into today. And I wrote a paper in college about it, and it was not just our physical body, but we also have a spiritual body, we have emotional body, a mental body, a physical body, and our relationship to the world with where we're at in those bodies. And we could also talk about it as energy frequencies, but I want us all to be aware of those different levels of awareness and perspective on where we are at. And physically grounding through our breath is a great way to just bring it all in and embody all of that. And that's going to make a difference in our finances and our financial wealth. And we're going to go into that later. But for now, I want to just pass over the talking stick over to my mother, Nola, and she's going to introduce herself and all of her background in this wonderful topic of loving yourself enough to build financial wealth. Take it away.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Elizabeth. This is a wonderful opportunity for me because I love working with my daughters. And this daughter in particular, we've done several different workshops together. The first one I'm remembering was when I was running a retreat. When I was running a retreat center in Michigan, and we did a mother-daughter workshop. And everyone was invited that was either a mother or a daughter or both. So that way we didn't exclude any women at all. And then we did a series of workshops when I moved back to California to Butte County around the power of yum. And we taught classes on broth making and fasting. And we're going to continue doing that because we use that as one of the skills in our life. Now, how do I begin talking to you about 84 years? I'm 84 years and exactly in 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. And in talking to my beautiful daughter, Elizabeth, and how I get started to introduce myself, I probably want to start with one of the key things that happened to me on Valentine's Day, 1988. I soloed as a pilot. I got my pilot's license in 1988 for single engine aircraft. And the reason I did it, which is part of what we're going to be talking about today is it was the number one fear on my list of fears. I was always getting airsick, or I was sick in motion. I should say it's motion sickness, whether it was a boat or an airplane. But when I was up in a plane, I had to take a baggie with me. It was just terrible. From the time I soloed in 1988 to now, I have not been sick flying one time. Now, why is that? I'm not sure. Was it because I took ground school, learned how to fly an airplane, and then every time I got into one, my mind was comfortable with how I was flying and what the reasons for flight um, were as far as the uplift, etc. And I would say to you that since flying was one of my number one fears, I started with that one. I just finished a major project, and we'll get into that in a minute. Um, and the flying, I just wanted to try it out. And I flew from 1988. I joined a flying club that had three planes, so I could get up almost any time. And then I flew until about 2000. Yeah, about 2000, when I had an accident that year that took a lot of the power away from me and my legs and my hands. But we'll get to that. That's another one. So, why do I want to do this workshop with Elizabeth? At my age, I've reinvented myself at least 10 times. I started as a real estate broker was my first main job out of college. Property manager for the people that own the apartment buildings, the top of Market Street in San Francisco where I was living. And so I combined my real estate licensing with property management. And then I went into the actual construction. And then I went into the investment side of real estate. I became a syndicator when I moved to Santa Barbara. And a syndicator is simply a person that knows how to put other people's money together. So pooling the money of my friends and associates that wanted to do some important things with real estate, I ended up building for the next 20 years. So along the way, the important thing for me to do was to be the best I could be. When I started my company in 1970, what was it, 1976, I went out on my own, and I've been on my own ever since. And what I wanted to do then was address, I was living here in Santa Barbara, which is where I came to raise my children after San Francisco and the busing issues. And I wanted to be part of the real estate and investment community by addressing what the needs of the community were. So what I did was find out what was needed in this community that a new real estate agent could help support. And it was always the same that it is now, a little bit worse now, I think, and that was housing, affordable housing. So I started into the construction of affordable housing. And I learned how to subdivide land. Land use became a major issue I'm still involved with. So one of the services we're going to be doing coaching is in all these things I've done myself, I'm willing to train whoever wants to learn. How do you find a property to build your own home? How do you do a remodel? How do you subdivide land? How do you do lot line adjustments? These are all things that are like second nature to me that I'm glad to share. I moved on in real estate, and I took it from the syndication area in my 30s and 40s, using others' money along with my own. And frankly, I'll be very honest with you right now. I come from a blue collar family. I paid my way through college. I did, and I paid my daughter's ways through college. That's true. I was a single mother, two daughters. And it was important to me to learn as I went. What were the things I needed, the skills I needed to acquire in order to do the best job I could do? So I was taking classes in law. I am a paralegal, and I was taking classes in accounting. I do a lot of work with finance. So how we deal with money, how it works in our lives, I don't really have any involvement with what kind of money you want to know or earn or have or seek. I can help you as a bridge builder, a paralegal, and also a trained mediator get to where you are today, where you want to be tomorrow. So I'm going to stop there and see if anybody wants to say anything.
I want to just applaud you. I'm always amazed when I hear your story, how much you've done. So I just want to give you, as I always do, the biggest cheer. And anybody else want to chime in any kind of question or where you're at in your own financial world?
Okay, then I'll continue. When I completed the last major project I did in the real estate area, I built out a subdivision with several partners of 100 and it had 172 housing units here in Santa Barbara. And I created a map with the help of the current owners of the land and had it annexed to the city of Santa Barbara. And if any of you have spent any time in Santa Barbara, it would be located right at the 154, which is the highway, and the 101 that goes up to Solvang and the goes north, goes into the San Ynez Valley. In doing so, I was a lady who had not very many resources. I had to go find partners that I could put together to help me buy $6 million of real estate. That's what it cost for the land to build out 172 units. And I had $37,500. I'm going to be real honest with you. This is my story. And I had worked for a company when I came to Santa Barbara that taught me how to syndicate and taught me not to be afraid of money. I was their director of marketing, creating new projects, shopping centers, apartment buildings, all kinds of things throughout California and Oregon. And it taught me to be comfortable no matter where you place the commas in the amount of money you're dealing with. Be comfortable with it and base it essentially on what the project is that you're doing. And when I started my own company, I did a small apartment building, and then I did a 6 unit here by City College that I build all my housing units as if they're condominiums. And that way, if somebody wants to buy an apartment building, it's already built or
Okay,
designed
leave.
and built for condominium units. I'm not going to take you through the whole project. It was a 9 year project that I did, that last housing project. But what it taught me was one, it was very difficult to work as a land developer and a developer and try to do something like affordable housing on a shoestring in a major money area, Santa Barbara, California, and not be up against major money controlled by our patriarchal system, because that's what we're living in. And so I ran into a situation where I wanted to just back off of everything once I finished the project, which was in 1990. I decided, actually, it wasn't 1990.
Yes, it was. I was there.
Okay. Okay, sometimes I get these decades kind of confused. Um, yes, it was 1990 because I ended up working and running a hotel next until I could close that partnership out. And then I went and decided I would close up my business. My one daughter was leaving for Europe, and the other one was married and having and had a child already. And I stopped everything then to look at who I was, what I'd done, and where I want to go. And I decided I was going to take whatever I needed in my new life and go camping for 8 years. So that's what I did. I closed up the business. I had a couple of doctor reports say, Nola, if you want to live much longer, you got to take better care of yourself. I've been working 7 days a week. Just it was very hard on me. Um, and I just went and I created my bucket list. I had my pilot's license. I could rent a plane. I was qualified to rent a plane anywhere in the United States. So I bought an old VW camper and I hit the road and I went coast to coast. I would stop and fly at times. Um, and I went as far south as Guatemala. I went as far north as Alaska. And then I was fortunate enough to be present for the birth of my grandson, Elizabeth's son, and had a few injuries along the way. Um, Decided I would start coaching while I was on my sabbatical of 8 years to help people with whatever they were doing. So I did a subdivision in Michigan for a client. I worked with some people that wanted to start a business. I had other people that owned land, but they didn't have any money, so they wanted to know how to create the money. I worked with nonprofits because they needed to raise additional funds and they didn't know how to deal with it. Um, I even did, by then I had my mediator's certificate. I was even doing divorce mediations that I was always trying to put the marriages back together again. And that was my hoping that if I taught people how to communicate better, that they would find common ground in all their relationships this lifetime. So I still teach communication skills through my mediation training. I work with people if they're wanting to start a business. I'm kind of giving you an overview. I don't want to load you down, but I'm trying to get some things out here that were important to me and are important to me that I can encourage you to talk to me about today so I might be able to help each of you with whatever your one challenge is. If through Elizabeth's meditation as we came on, you came up with something, what would I really like to have different in my life? I can take you back to the broth making days, which I'm still doing. In fact, right now I'm cooking with for a neighbor of mine, a wonderful friend. And I'm using the cancer fighting recipes that Elizabeth gave me for I think one of my birthdays, a cookbook from the chef at Commonweal, which I hope most of you are familiar with her work there. It's very important. And I've been making the soups and the dishes from that. And my friend is going through chemotherapy and radiation, and they're helping her a lot. They're helping me clear my body because they build our immune system, which is we all need. We all need. Um, so I'm going to stop here a moment and see if I've just, before I go into the next phase of what I've done with financial literacy and money. And I've worked with that primarily rather than on a single client basis. The workshops I did through COVID and after COVID. So before I get started on that, is there anyone here that has a question or wants to put forth a subject you'd like to have me expand more on from what I've covered already? Nope. Either I've said a lot um, or I haven't touched yet on what you're really here for. So can we take a few minutes?
I
Has
just want to read what Dwight put in the chat. Thanks, Dwight. Nola, are you working as a consulting for SBDC, the Small Business Development Center for your area?
No, I'm not. I work independently.
Thanks, Dwight, for that question.
There's several organizations here. That's one of them. I haven't, I am asked to speak often and I go and speak whenever I'm asked, but I have kind of pulled back from a lot of organizations. I make myself available to them whenever I can, but I don't like the politics when people get together. I don't know if you can identify this with me, but there's always someone that's got to control everything. And I'm just tired of that. I'm tired of the ego in everything. I'm tired of the greed in business. I'm tired of the ego and the way we have to protect ourselves. And instead of learning to communicate clearly, we're always trying to, all of us do it, give the rationale for why we did an action so that we could come out looking better than anybody else. I don't want that. I want to be a lot more authentic. So during COVID, so if anyone has an organization that they'd like me to speak to, in my travels of those 8 years, I spoke to a lot of women's groups and small business groups. I went and visited business incubators that were sponsored by local organizations and universities and city colleges and offered myself to them as a coach and a speaker, and they always took me up on it. So I've spoken since the 1980s across the US and back again. But I find I need personally to work on myself because those first years of setting up my business and building all those units and having to deal with it was I didn't deal with any women. It was all men, and they were not happy with me being part of their business. Once I got into construction, that was a man's field. Women don't belong there. I had contractors work off the job, just walk away from me and say, "My God, I didn't know you were a woman. I used to go under just my initials. I don't want to work for a woman. I can't work for a woman." And that was mostly 1970s and 80s. I did not have much of that problem after the late 80s. My last major project started in 1983 and finished in 1990. And that took me through 5 phases of construction for all the units. And by the time I finished, I was able to have a reputation that people did want to work for me. Because when I first got started, what I said to them is, I pay every Friday. And if you request it, I also give you a paycheck with a 6 pack of beer. I will show up by 5 o'clock every Friday with your paycheck and a 6 pack. And half the time would sit on the tail, the backside of the trucks and drink the beer together. And that's how I got to know my contractors. So I love construction. I love real estate. If I hadn't been hurt in a fall in 1999, 2000, and hurt my leg and my hands, I would have continued in real estate and construction. But I gave up my broker and corporate broker's license because I could hardly walk. And I stopped flying because I had no strength in my hands or my legs. So a wonderful dear friend of mine, an Argentinian landowner in Michigan, called me. "Nola, get up, get up. You have to come here." "I can't," I said. "I can barely walk even with crutches." She said, "It's okay. I'll be your legs and I'll be your hands, but I need your mind. Come, we have to run this retreat center together." And that's where I went for the next couple of years. And I learned to sculpt that healed my hands. And I learned that I could rely on other people and that they would come through. And my friend, her name was Estella Rodriguez at the time. The two of us lived in this big old house. I had the upstairs, she had the downstairs. And that's where Elizabeth flew out and did the workshop for mothers and daughters with me. And I had a wonderful time there for several years. And I came back twice to that location and helped with different projects. Um,
Yeah, take a breath for a moment. And, you've given us a lot of information about yourself that I'd like to ground into the present in what does that bring in your background to all of us to apply to our lives? And I know you've hit on some themes, on coming together as a community with Estella, and when you included people into your projects to do in real estate. And I feel like that's such a theme for now. That's why we're coming together here to step into a new timeline to really bring together not only our own inner strengths, but how do we lean on our community to actually catapult ourselves forward. And I want you to continue sharing about that retreat center that you had going on, because that brought in some of your other talents that were so necessary that you hinted upon, which is your cooking passion and broth making and healing through food, and a catering business that you started and reaching out to the community to fill that need. And I guess I want everybody's own inner creativity to get sparked by your story. So I want you to continue, but I just want us all to keep grounding it into how do we apply some of what your story is about to our own lives and where we want to go.
Thank you. Thank you. Sometimes I get lost in my story. It's like how much do I tell? What do I share? Am I boring everybody? What's coming through to me to share with you intuitively? It's what we do with the circumstances that occur to us. I look at everything instead of good and bad, which I used to judge a lot more than I do today, as challenges and opportunities. You've probably heard this over and over. What's a challenge? What's your challenge? What's your opportunity? What do you want to move forward with? Is it a new business? Is it learning about the stock market, or whether to buy gold or silver, or how do I get $1 million over the next X number of years? Or how do I invest? Where do I set up accounts? Which bank or organization is giving me the best interest rate on my savings? What's an emergency fund? I don't know. These are all the things that I can think of that you might be dealing with right now. But the essence of what I want to get through to you is there's always a way to support yourself in moving forward. And I think of it, for instance, when I was bored, I had the two girls in school, high school, they were teenagers, and I needed to earn the money to take care of us. I was wanting to be challenged myself, and yet I was bored to death because I had to do so many things that took so much time, the accounting part of the business, the constant calls and follow-up, that I came up with a plan that would get me out of the rut I was coming into, no matter what it was. For instance, I would change what I ate every day. If I ate this for dinner, I started eating it for breakfast. If I and swapping it. If I had to go to an appointment at that location over there, I'd figure a way I could go different, even if I went out of my way, that would get me there in a new way so that I had an experience that was different than yesterday. I did that on my way to the work in Santa Barbara once. That was beautiful. And my office was downtown Santa Barbara. I lived not too far, maybe 10 minutes from downtown. And I said, no, I have the time today. I'm going to take the drive south of here, go up through Ojai, take the highway out of Ojai over to Santa Maria and come back to Santa Barbara. 3 hours later, I still wasn't at the office. That's how long it took me to make that loop. And on the map, I figured, oh, I can do that. But I couldn't go as fast as I could go, say, on a freeway because it was all winding roads. Anyway, I learned a lot that time. I never ever did that again. So finding a new way. Another way I have found that's been terrific for me. When I first came to Santa Barbara in 1973, and I needed to work as a real estate broker, and I had no clients. I had no business. I, and it was all commission sales. Is I took my business card and I designated once a week, I went to a new block in Santa Barbara, whether it was housing or commercial. Usually it was a combination. And I would take my business card and go and introduce myself to everybody on that square block and simply say, I'm not here to do any more than to get familiar with your business or look at your home. I'm a real estate broker new to town. I'm looking for business if it ever comes my way, but I'd like to introduce myself and ask if there's anything in real estate I could help you with today. I got callbacks from that practice for the next 20 years. They kept my card. They called me back. Sometimes I wouldn't hear, maybe I wouldn't hear for a year from anybody. And then all of a sudden I got two calls, call here, call there. I want you to list my property. I really liked your energy. And I got to know my city, my town by just walking it, parking my car and doing one block at a time. That's the way to build business.
Can I interrupt you for a second? One of the things that was really valuable you just said was about changing things up. And I was just listening to a mentor on YouTube about that in order to combat our old habits, we have to do a pattern interrupt. We have to do something new. We have to, like you said, switch things up constantly because our old patterns and our old beliefs and old ways of doing things sets us up for not advancing and growing as much as we can. And a lot of our training throughout our lives in this society is to kind of numb people out, to dumb people down, to keep people distracted with obviously doom scrolling on social media right now. But if we change things up, it does something in our brains to stir up new neural pathways. So I just wanted to interject that because I really loved what you said about changing the way that you were doing your route to go to work, but also to go open up a whole new group of people to connect with, which, I really love that. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. And there's lots of ways, just like in communication, that's another way. I'm working now with some of my relatives, the young men in my family, my sister's sons, and they're having a difficult time communicating with their parents and with each other. And they're all in their 40s and 50s, and they have lots of ego. It'd be wonderful if everybody could set their ego aside when they're 30 and when they enter their 40s and 50s, that they have this wonderful balanced being. But in this culture, I don't think that's going to happen all the time. So at least my nephews are talking to me and saying, how do I talk better? How do I get my message across? How do I communicate better? And it's one of the things I do in the mediation work. If you have an adversarial situation with a child, a parent, a friend, a neighbor, a business, I don't care who it is, always start with one sentence that's positive about them. Bring them into the communication and make sure you mean it. If it's as simple as saying, you really look nice today, I like the color pink on you, or something you like about them. If it's a business person, maybe it's, I've really admired your fireplaces and that's why I ordered one. But I don't think that you, perhaps, and this happened to me with a client. she couldn't communicate with the person who ended up bringing her a bill for twice what she said they agreed to, and she didn't know what to do about it. So I was coaching her through that. These are the little coachings I do that just help people get where they need to go with as little pain as possible and no lawsuit or collection agency. So if you can just make a positive statement and then very clearly, without all the reasons behind it, what do you want from them? And do it as simply and as positively as you can. Make the I statement. We all know the difference between you statements and I statements. You statements get defensiveness coming back. I statements claim and make a statement about who you are. So I need you to consider this. I need you to, whatever it happens to be fair with me, in the case of my nephews, you need to hear me. So if I'm not, I am not getting the information I need from you, how can I reach you in a better way for you? In other words, you're asking for them to come in and help you solve the problem. That's a case of one of my nephews taking care of his mother. Um, they're at odds all the time, and they're so much alike. It's like, but how we can learn to communicate um, is clearing ourselves of that ego and learning to clearly state what it is you need. It's I need you to be a better person doesn't work, but I
And
need you.
I want to interrupt you because I really want you to talk about the other ear.
Ah, oh, my favorite statement. Thank you. I asked Elizabeth because sometimes I'm trying not to run on a whole bunch of things I'm reading to you. I'm trying to be very spontaneous with you. And we haven't tried this kind of a session together before. So you're kind of like our first attempt. Um, Listening is the most important thing we can do in communicating. I hope you all agree with me with that. Yeah. To listen effectively, it's important to use all three of our ears. We have two on the outside, and we have one in the word Heart. If we listen with our heart and our two exterior ears, there's just magic that happens. You bring the heart into the mind. And that's one of my favorite sayings. The other one that I learned in 8 years of camping, probably in the fifth year, two things happened when I went on this camping trip, besides the bears and the snakes and all the other things that I ran into. One of them was in my work, I had a bucket list of all the things that gave me that I was afraid of. And flying was the first one, so I did that first. But when I went camping, I was afraid of water in a major way. I swam, but to whitewater raft was scary for me. Doing the glaciers, that was scary. Hang gliding was scary. Um, Hiking and staying out in the wilderness alone with a backpack and 40 pounds was scary for me. These are all the things I did during that period, as well as just studying whatever it was I wanted to learn about, which were major books and major concepts. 7 or 8 authors that I wanted. My Bible was with me. The I Ching was with me. The Buddhist books were with me. And I studied shamanism of all the American tribes. Those were my goals. The ears, the listening, the other one was one morning I woke up in Montana and it was snowing. And I walked out of my camper and I had my bucket, my kettle with me to build a fire and make my breakfast, and it was snowing and the snowflakes were falling. And in Montana and Alaska, I noticed the snowflakes are huge. And if the sun is out, which it was that morning, they came through the snowflakes and you saw all the patterns. It was magnificent. And I would swear to this day that I heard a voice, and it wasn't the typical sound, but I had been praying and meditating on what I was doing in the wilderness when I could be working, earning a lot more money, or being of service to other people instead of coming in trying to learn more about myself. And maybe what was happening, since I was already in my late 50s, early 60s, was I wasting this God-given time doing something like camping in the wilderness. And all of a sudden, this voice to me came out of the trees and everything else, and it said, "Relax, Nola. The world isn't ready for you yet." That had a major significance to me. So every time you start feeling guilty about not being where you think you ought to be by this time, I think of that. That's what I think about. Is the world really ready for you yet? And if I looked at the world that I was in at that time, it was nothing like the world we're in right now with the issues that we're all dealing with day to day. The need now for community and communication is so out there, of being part of community, of supporting one another, and it's pushing us, the energy of at this time, to isolate, and that's not the answer. So back to, you asked me about the retreat center and what happened there. I spent wonderful years at the retreat center. 3 times I was there. I was married there for the third time, and I'll talk about marriages if you'd like to. I did not do well in my marriages. I understand why now. Um, I'm definitely someone that likes a lot of personal space, and that I learn the skills to be able to support myself okay and the people I love. I would have liked to have had a partner that was in it with me, but I seem to attract men that the first two that had a hard time making money, an easy time spending it, and the third one having money but was very selfish. So I decided 3 times was kind of like a ball game. I checked out and I just decided to do it alone. And I've been alone now since 20, since 21 years, 22 years. And it works for me. Um, Part of the reasons I went to the retreat center in Michigan, it was on 130 acres, was to be of service and to heal. Those were the two things. What I realized when I went there after the remodel of the farm, it was a turn of the century farm, and we got all the buildings going. I left the first time and left it with my friend Estela Rodriguez, um, and her husband, and he left several years later and left her alone where she wasn't able to continue it. So when I went back after my accident, we looked at how we wanted to run the farm in order to make enough money to support the farm. So I created a business plan for her and for myself. And what we did is we rented out rooms in 4 buildings, including the stables, the farmhouse, and the main very large home on the river in Michigan. And it was a horse ranch, a horse farm. So there were horses, there were orchards, there were gardens, and she was teaching sculpting at the time. She's a major sculptress in the Michigan area, and that's who taught me to sculpt. Um, what we needed to do, and I think this is one of the things my daughter just talked about, try, is okay, there I am. I don't have a whole bunch of use of hands and legs, feet, it's ankles. That's what I had the damage in. And we needed to have catering done. And the caterers in the area, we were in a farming community where we're only one or two, and they didn't want to cater for breakfast or lunch, they'd do dinner. So I wanted to create a catering company as a solution. So I got in touch with all the people that were on our mailing list that loved to come to this place. The property was called Windrise Farm in Metamora, Michigan. And I said to them, if you would like to come for paid times, in other words, rooms at no charge or camping at the river, then will you help me and spend some time backing me in a catering company and learning how to cook for a group? So I had at least 25 volunteers come and train under me in the kitchen. And we had a beautiful commercial kitchen and butler's kitchen and the whole thing. And so I ran for the 2 years I was there with the catering company, um, healing weekends, healing circles, teamed up with the University of Michigan's School of Alternative Healing with heart patients and cancer patients that would come and stay for up to 1 week. And I opened the retreat center. I was the only one at the time living full time there. And then the owner would come on weekends to help. She was actually my assistant in the kitchen. And I was her assistant in the sculpting classes. And people came and cooked and served. We did breakfast, lunch, and dinner for heart patients. We taught them how to eat in a different way. The second day they were there, they'd leave the Beano in their room because they didn't need it anymore. I used a lot of the things I use now in my broth making and cooking, such as kombu, uh, parsley, juniper berries. These things clean out the system and heal us and have the trace minerals and the minerals that we really need. So I taught the things I'd learned. I had learned how to do sprouting, so we were sprouting everything. And we were cooking 3 meals a day for when we had the people there. And I only ran the retreat center, say it's 2 weeks out of every month. So we were able to handle all the volunteers and keep it moving and still allow time for people to come and have their own retreats. I have to take a break, everybody.
Yeah, please take a break. You have a lot to share, and I
I
just want to tell you that you're doing a beautiful job in letting us take a peek in at your past on how you wove all of these talents together. And I just want to ground us into thinking about our own lives as you're talking, but also to bring it into the practical, because I know a lot of people are coming here to figure out their financials in their life, what's the next step. And I know we're taking this first hour to get really acquainted with all of your amazing skills and talents, but it is a lot to take in. So I just want to take a moment to give you a break and just invite anybody in the circle today to share a little bit about what you've gained so far in listening to Nola's story. Is there anything in your own life that it triggers for you?
Fiona has gone away, I notice.
Yeah, I mean,
Ginger,
are you here?
I don't know.
No,
I'm
I didn't.
looking here. Ginger has left. Christine's with us. Clarita's with us. Dwight's here. The idea was to talk about me, and I generally don't tell this long a story. I'm hoping to trigger some things that interest you, but in this Second half, I want to go into the financial literacy courses I've been teaching and coaching for and building businesses. As a business coach, I do startups and I also do regenerating existing businesses and talking to people that may have an income but need additional income.
I think that that is what maybe will help a lot of people, but we also, after you feel like you're complete with what you want to share, that maybe you can come up with a question to pose to people that would help everybody have a chance to share their voice in the circle. I would love for anybody to that feels called to share a little bit about where they're coming from.
Well, I can definitely speak up for myself, that's for sure. Um, I I love your story and I love all the things that you have done. It's wow, it's overwhelming to hear all the things that you have done and successfully done. And that's I just love that, Nola. That's really, really cool. I tend to gravitate to what you were talking about with your family conversation issues and things like that. Um, I know it is with my life and a previous, not so far off, how do I say that? Just a rough time with my life and had to learn to stay present and conscious about what I'm thinking and doing and not going to my past. And um, I have some debt from a period of time when I was not here with my husband, and I'm back. And things are a lot better now. I've got my heart and mind and all that kind of stuff back into a groove now because of my being in the present and not ever going back to the past and bringing that forward because all it does is just mess things up again. So um, there's this guy that I just love following him. His name is Joe Dispenza, and he's a man that healed himself from a horrible bicycle injury that he was in. And they told him he'd never walk again, and he's going to just have tons of metal and screws in his back and spine and neck. And he chose a different
Yeah.
way. And I totally believe that we can heal ourselves. We can be different. And
Right.
when we do that, things start falling in place.
Yeah.
So, yes, I have this debt, but I am really working on it in a way. It's the fear and the worry is now gone. So,
Good.
I just wanted to speak to that because I'm 64, and my husband and I are working on our own financials and doing a good job at it. But I just got to get rid of this little debt that I have, and I'm not worried about it now. So I just appreciate you stepping up and sharing yourself.
Good. Thank you. Thanks, Jill.
You're welcome.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah. I do want to move once we've got heard from everybody into some financial literacy classes I've been doing, and I have available information on it, and also on starting businesses or how do we augment income when we have issues to meet, such as old debt. Sometimes a new way to look at our own talents makes a difference. So I want to get into that a little bit because we want to come forward for the next program. Elizabeth, you might speak on this, on what our objective is for the next 6 months.
Yeah, I just want to read what Dwight put in the chat. I guess, Dwight, you're not able to use your volume, but we'd love to hear your voice if you'd like to speak. Otherwise, I'm going to read from the chat what you wrote. And Dwight says, I appreciate what you are saying and sounds like certain things both of you have been through or interests I can relate. For me, I'm in rather isolated situation after loss of the family home and vehicle, but now in my cabin out in a rural area and having to use satellite for my communications, often dealing with all of the losses in my subconscious experiences. So that speaks to me on what you were saying, Jill, about working with your heart and mind and not going back to the past in old tapes running in your mind, perhaps. That, Dwight, maybe that is the area of what you need to work on. And I hope maybe we can speak to that also as how do we work with our minds? I mean, Joe Dispenza is one of my role models too. And how do we go forward in creating the life we want in the future? So that's what we're going to be working on in the next 6 months as well. We decided, both of us, to really offer to the community once a month free event like today that we would talk about different subjects. And so you're going to be getting more newsletters from us about what themes are important to you to discuss, because we really do believe in building community and supporting each other through these times, because they will be moving fast into a lot of change that we're experiencing, and it can be quite intense. And to speak to Dwight, isolation is a hard thing. Humans are meant to be more social, and yes, we need our alone times, but we also need to ask for help. And that is a very spiritual law, is ask and ye shall receive. But it takes a lot of humbleness at times for us to even ask for help. So what does that look like? And I think it starts from within the higher power. So we'll talk about that as well. But carry on, Nola. I know you're on the spotlight here on how to bring this all together in the next part of the experience here about building wealth.
Yeah, I want to talk next about the practical side of it, the isolation issue. Dwight, thank you for that. When I started my business, I wanted to do business differently, and I didn't make mention of this before. So I came up with a formula that I'm still doing. Hi, Dwight. Um, the formula I made when I started business in 1976 was 80%. I would create a budget, and 80% of the income I made I would use for my own purposes, my own expenses and investing, etc. And the other 20% I would do pro bono and community projects. That's what allowed me to go into a project that perhaps was affordable housing rather than doing very high-end building in Santa Barbara, which is what all my competitors were doing. I went with the city and the county and did housing for teachers and firemen and policemen and that sort of thing. They were still units that were bought and sold on the open market. But as a developer, I did not sell to outside of the Santa Barbara area. I kept it within the framework of who lived and worked in Santa Barbara. And that I worked it on a basis of what people earned, and I probably at times was discriminate against people who had more money, because the LA brokers would come in and want to buy up all the units I built, and I wouldn't sell to them. I'd just say no, but I would seek out and advertise to teachers, um, business owners. I did intergenerational advertising where I said, come, I built duplexes and condos. Come buy a duplex and put your mama in one side and your kids in the other so they could go to a good school. Because we have UCSB here and we have several other colleges. Um, so it was a different setup. What I want to talk a little bit about is, in the 8 years I was camping and moving around, I didn't have a whole bunch of money. My money, I have to say, I always earned what I needed, and it was always presented to me at the time I created new projects. I believe that the universe does take care of us, but we have to meet it halfway by going through a process of claiming it and knowing it's happening. I don't know how else to say it. So when I would come up with a project I would want to do, such as I wanted to create boarding houses in Santa Barbara that were open to all generations. And they would build small communities like they did way back 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And that what I envisioned was single moms and dads that had children that needed supervision and elderly that could also rent their seniors. And I built all these boarding house projects based on handicapped or senior housing. So the hallways were wide enough for wheelchairs. The bathroom fixtures and knobs and everything were done for handicapped. And that benefited children, it benefited elderly and handicapped people. And I was met with a lot of rejection on my ideas. That, for instance, the county and the city turned me down on projects after I designed them. I got everything in, the land was bought. Then they'd say, "Well, we've decided you have to make it all seniors, or you have to make it all handicapped, and we don't want children along with adults." I said, "But the whole idea was to get the generations living together." The older retired people could take care of the kids and help them with their homework. I mean, was that too much to ask for? This was one of my dreams. And moms and dads that had jobs to go to would still have the opportunity to have someone within that small unit. And they were usually 8 to 10 units in a single location, in a single building or two, so that there was a community being built. And I got turned down and limited to who I could rent to. So in situations like that, I would sell the project. I'd sell it before I even built it or before I rented it. Well, what I want to say that's larger than things that you may want to do at this point or can't do. But what about the skills you have? What are all the things? Have you made your list of all the things you do well? And what are the things you love to do the most? Not just the jobs you've had, but the things you do. Like I love to cook. I love to cook. I've even thought about at 80, almost 84, I'm not going to be able to open a restaurant, but I wish I would have been able to do a truck, a broth making truck or something, where I could have sold my broths and salads out in the workplace. And so, but I can write about them and I can create a business plan for these things. That's what I'm hoping to do with these sessions is okay, we have an idea. I've made my list. Here's the things I'm good at. Now, how does that translate? This is what I do with business coaching. How does that translate into what um, the need is? And who wants those services and what kind of services? So you go online, library, if you don't have a computer, or online yourself, and find out what kind of services offer these kind of things that I'm good at. And then who's doing them? And you find out in time who's doing them. And sometimes they need more employees. So you go to work in that particular area that you're good at and learn how that company runs and then decide I want to stay and advance myself, or I want to go out and do it myself, which is what I did after I learned how to build and syndicate. There's a lot of money available, and I do teach an hour's time on how do I find the money if I don't have enough money. And there are ways to get grants, and there's ways to get loans. There's ways to get investors together to help you. And I work on a skill sheet with people that want to go in that direction. I also work with what kind of debt do I do I owe, and what am I doing to pay it, and what else could I do to pay it that's different than what I'm doing now. And that helps when a coach or somebody that's had a lot of opportunity with debt and expenses and income to look at it with fresh eyes. I love the idea of taking hobbies or special interests. For instance, Elizabeth has this beautiful son. I have this gorgeous grandson. We share that gentleman. He's now in his mid-20s. He loves the wilderness. So we've both been encouraging him to do wilderness, scheduled wilderness teaching. How do you build a fire in the wilderness? How do you cook out there one meal in a dish on a fire? How do you just spend time in the forest? How do you hike? How do you camp? How you do? People want to know these things. So that might be something Dwight thinks about with what he's doing in isolation. How do you attract just, and then on the coaching sessions I do, I'll say, okay, here's your idea. How is it going to make money? What does your budget financial plan look like? And I help you do that. I teach you how to do that. And I work a financial plan because it makes me feel good when I can check off all the things I've accomplished. So I make sure I have a very specific checklist. And it may start with I have to do so much research once a week. I do 4 hours of research a week usually. And then I'm going to research these ideas and see how they work. And once you're out there and you're inquiring online, it's amazing how many people come up with ideas that take you in a place that just your idea, your skill was just a seed for it. It just expands into so much bigger because what's happened? You've now asked the universe to play with you, to partner with you. If you stay alone, this is my little debt circle, this is my little isolation, this is my little issue, this is my little challenge, and I'm going to keep it because I don't want to open it up to the universe. Now, maybe you do. I'm not saying that. I have to really open it to the universe. How do I do that? I do some of it online. I talk to people. Who are the people that I feel comfortable enough to share an idea with? And it's amazing what flows back and forth, because now you've opened it to the universe to help you. The universe wants to co-create with you. Unless you become a co-creator, it can't. And that's what I teach above everything else.
I love that. Thank you for that. You know, when I was in one of my lowest points, not having money flow, and the only skill I had to make money with was massage work. But I was in a very dark point in my inner world. But I looked at the phone and I thought, you know, the only way I'm going to generate the income I need is to get on the phone and start talking to people. And I started to call people I had massaged before, and that was my gift, and my income was doing massage work. And I started to call people I had massaged a year before, months before, and they were so happy I called them. They were just joyful that I had remembered them. And they said, I am so glad you called. I think of you all the time, but I let life get too busy. And I'm so glad. Will you please bug me every month? I need a massage every month, and I want to be on your list. And I started to realize that was the way I could get my business even more successful, is to have what I call the bugging list. And I say that to people, would you like to be on my bugging list? I'll bug you every month.
I like that.
People love that because we do get busy in our own little universe. And sometimes it takes somebody to kind of enter in and again, that pattern interrupt, you know, getting disturbed. And, you know, I had to own it that I'm a disruptor. I create messes. I'm a disruptor. And, to own it as a good thing, versus putting myself down for it. It was like, oh, people do want to be bugged. And, in a good way. If it's something like you said, going into a new neighborhood and introducing myself to say, I'm not here to solicit, I'm just here to say, is there something I can help you with? So it comes from a different place in the heart than just like, oh, I just need to make money. And yeah, I did need to make money, but I did want to be of service. So people felt that. That was like, oh, are you ready for a massage yet? Most people don't turn me down. Just wanted to share that little bit in there.
Beautiful. Do you remember one of those times when your business needed to be built? We worked together. You asked me for coaching, and I gave you assignments and then checked up on you. And we did a financial plan that said, okay, you need to earn this for your expenses. What are the ways you can do that? Part of it was massage work. Part of it was working for a doctor with massage work, but being paid a salary. And we determined that what you needed were both. You needed clients and you needed a doctor or two. And I asked you to call so many doctors a week to
Yeah.
introduce yourself. And you
It
did.
really is amazing how it worked. And even to this day, I think at the time I wrote letters to all the chiropractors in the area and asked if they were looking for a massage therapist to work in their office. And to this day, I meet people all the time that went to these chiropractors that I had written letters to that I never heard back from, but I knew their names because I had written them a letter. And, I'd hear back from people that ended up finding me for massage, and I'd say, oh, I know that chiropractor. I wrote him a letter years ago. And they never responded back to me. But I did actually end up working for a chiropractor, not from any of the lists that I had reached out and made calls to, but because I think it goes with what you just said, that the universe was willing to play with me. So I got this random call from a friend who said, hey, you might be interested in working for this chiropractor who was reaching out to me as a massage therapist, but I'm not wanting to work in a doctor's office. Are you? And I said, well, yeah, actually, I just put all these letters out. So it is funny how we attract to us what we want, but it might not come from that place that we think it's going to come from, right?
It rarely does. It comes from somewhere else, some connection. I go through it every day. It's just amazing. It's amazing. So can we help anybody? Can I help anybody right now with what they're in need of to kind of work through a coaching session? Is there anything that you've heard or you might want to explore around challenges you have to make them into opportunities? It's okay if you don't. I have lots of stories.
This is a great opportunity for like the hot seat. If any of you are brave enough to bring forward an issue, because Nola is such an incredible generator of ideas. I can't even begin to tell you how that has influenced me in my life. But this is the moment for a hot seat if anybody wants it. Otherwise, we can move into some areas. Dwight, are you ready?
I'm going to see if I've got the bandwidth. Okay, yeah, it looks like I've got the bandwidth now to
Yay!
use the camera and the speaker here.
Good.
Something I was going to share with you, Elizabeth, was last week I'm listening to a series going on back at Unity Village, and they're talking about spiritual economics. And something important really hit me of what, quoting Eric Butterworth, and that was about the flow of money and is symbolic of what's going on in your own life.
Mhm.
And there's, like I was saying, there's a subconscious mind too. But if you take a look, it's like it's not the money itself, but a reflection of what is going on at a deeper level. And I think that's what I'm dealing with. Every day is a challenge to appreciate and have gratitude for. Um, and I am that. I'm moving out of the losses, which are there, but at the same time, being up here in the forest with all the animals around me as my neighbors and all, I have a gratitude for what I do have. I think the thing though is when you're in my situation, and I know I relate to Nola camping out there in Montana and those places. Uh, I I got terminated from my work after I had heart surgery last year. They didn't come back quick enough, but to me it was a blessing because um, I had this duality of a challenge there. I'm going. I've got to do something better, something that's me. And I was thinking I could do a writing about this, unchain my heart to allow myself to move forward. So even though I lost my source of income at that time, it was not necessarily a loss of my prosperity. It was overcoming an obstacle. But now the challenge is okay, living out in the woods, 7 miles out, which is considered far out by a lot of people here from the urban service area, and then without a working vehicle too. This is what I'm moving through as a challenge here, and I I really appreciate what you've said. I've taken some notes here. You got some good things that you had just said there about taking inventory of what you enjoy, your different skills, all that. I'm putting that together here in my thoughts, so I want to feed that back to you.
But Dwight, people want to hear stories. Particularly, we elders have a real responsibility. Our younger people are really in flux and they're worried and they're stressed. And I have young people that want to cook with me, um, young people that want to just talk or learn how to communicate differently. Um, it's just if we can just find, and Elizabeth's been encouraging me because I've been fairly isolated. In During COVID, right after COVID started, I had two strokes, and it did not affect me physically where I could not physically move. It affected my brain, and I could no longer do numbers and letters. And cognitively, it affected me greatly, and it took me a while to come back from that. And I remember my children were wonderful. They both circled around me, and my grandson Ian, Elizabeth's son, came and lived with me for almost a year. He just said, "I want to take care of you, Grandma." I said, "Well, thank you." He says, "Well, you've done that for me. I'm going to do that for you." So we learned to cook together and wrote a cookbook we still haven't published. But we found in the things that we loved to do just by being together. He loved to paint and he started painting voraciously. And I loved to cook and tell stories and learn to write again and work some numbers. I couldn't do a spreadsheet that whole year. Um, so I think it's wonderful that you're reinventing yourself, Dwight. That's what I call it. I don't have depressions. I have incubator times. I think we incubate for new things to happen. And if you've been in an incubation period, it's time to give birth to a new idea, a new identity. Thank you for that. I think we need to hear your story. So during COVID, everybody,
You hear from anybody else here?
that's what I keep giving pauses so somebody may want to talk.
Go ahead and talk, Dwight, if you want to comment on anything.
Well, I'm trying to think what I might say here, but I think one thing I relate with you, Elizabeth, was the fire up there, the campfire, and having lost everything with such short notice. I've found a parallel when I had to move out of the family home, which is where I'd been looking after my mom, and had very short notice to have to move out of there, and just kind of try and salvage what I could to fit in the vehicle that I had, which was also breaking down too. But I've been through a lot here, including even the hospitalization last year. But I think it brings up an awareness and appreciation for others as well. If you have to start all over again, I find myself, whatever I experience, I'm reaching out, helping, and making an awareness to the community as well that they're not aware of what it is possibly to be shut in with an aging population in the rural area of this county, people who have become homeless because they got evicted. Unless you've experienced these things firsthand, most people don't really understand and to share these experiences. I find myself doing a lot of writing, but I got to get it a little more compact together to make something from my writing that could actually be publishable. But that's one thing I do find myself doing. I think one thing I was going to share, what I had been doing and relating with mentioning the pandemic there before, I was doing Apple consulting, and I would travel all over the house making house calls, primarily focused on people who had their own home-based businesses. Well, when the pandemic came along, I was completely shut out. I wasn't allowed to make those house calls. And that was one of the big losses right there alone. And being a sole proprietor, I wasn't getting any help. So I was taking on doing at least some part-time work for a local government agency. And then they expected, well, it wound up being as a essential worker, we're going to start taking over your life. And I'm going, no, I enjoy what I was doing when I come to work here as my skills, but I need my own life. And so this is the thing about moving on, putting it together, and listening to uh, what spirit is telling you that even if you can do something, there may be something better that really utilizes your skills. And so this is the transition, like Richard Bach with the illusions. You may be battered and tossed about, but look, uh, he flies. He's one of us, but he's risen above the challenges.
And that's an inner journey to find that courage, and I think that's what you were saying earlier, Mom, about your bucket list of fears. What is it that we fear? And that's the area to lean into. And that is often where we stop ourselves, because what is that fear? It really doesn't hold you back unless you give it energy, right? And if you're educating yourself about it, you understand, like you did, Mom, with the understanding of airplane, how it works. Your fears and your dizziness and your getting sick when you flew went away, because on some level you were able to metabolize or integrate it. And I think that's the incubation time that you're going through, Dwight, is figuring out those skills and reinventing yourself that might be scary to reach out to the community, where your gifts might be really needed for speaking out about the homeless or the elderly. Where is maybe your niche in that community that needs a voice? And that might be collaboration. I'll let you take it from here, Nola.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I agree. And I think finding out in your own community, Dwight, or for any of us, what are the nonprofits that are active in the area that interests you and get to know them because that brings service and it also brings some wonderful contacts. I think that really works. I'm feeling like we can kind of wind things up a little earlier. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yeah, I would love for you to just give a few kind of pointers on teasing us a bit on how to create our financial plan and some steps to take for just practical homework, even though, we want it to be play work or play, creating our own playbook. I want to lighten it up, not be so serious, because business can often feel serious, but to make it fun. Anything you can talk to into that, Mom?
Sure. I'd like to say one thing. Some of us are doing taxes at this time. And one of the things I recommend to my clients, I have some clients that I work with as financial advisor to them. And one of the things that's helped us tremendously with their taxes and with tax planning every year is when you do your taxes, do a narrative, no more than one page. What happened that year? And you can use that in your writing. You can use that later in going for nonprofit funds. If you come up with a nonprofit that is giving funds away for certain service projects, it becomes a narrative. You're writing, Dwight, most of us do too. I journal every day. Do a narrative about your year. I keep it with my tax return. And if you're ever audited, you've got a little memory initiator that helps know what went on. I use it for my all my writing, my story writing, my financial planning, the rest. Okay, the other one is I like I'm trying to use different words and I'm trying not to use the word budget. But I believe in a financial plan that starts out with your expenses in two categories. Ones you have to pay, and the other ones are a little bit arbitrary. You'd like to be able to afford them to live every month, but you could get by without them. So there are two categories. And there is a third category, and that is what do you have to come up with every year? Maybe you own a property that you live on and you have to pay the taxes or insurance. And those don't come out of a monthly basis, they come out of annual usually or biannual. So do your expenses and then do your income. And in your income, start taking note of the things you do for money that you enjoy doing. And in the positions you take, what parts of that job do you like and which ones don't you like? And I think for some of us, like maybe Dwight and myself, and maybe Elizabeth, I don't know, and Jill, I like to keep track of how I want to live hour-wise. Like I'm now, there's a difference from 75 to 83 in my energy. And I have lots of energy in the morning, but come 3, 4, 5 o'clock, I either have to take a nap or I have to, or I'm pretty much done for the day. So I have to look at my energy levels. Um, I'm taking more walks, which give me energy. Um, I've had both knees replaced, and that's been a godsend because I'm building the muscle back in both of them. And my eyes, other than the infection I have going right now, I have uh, the surgeries that have cleared the little bit of issues I had with them. So I'm in physical form in good shape, health-wise. But how do I use the energy that I have? And my energy has changed. And be aware at each one of our ages, your energy does shift depending on your immune system, respecting the fact that you need certain hours for yourself and certain hours that you can contribute something. Like, I don't want to spend 6 hours in my garden, so that's one of the reasons I'm back coaching. And my big issue is trying not to coach too much and get too busy. And my daughter is my kind of bulldog on that. So that's a help. So just breaking down your expenses, breaking down your income. And if you want to work with your income like I do all the time, what is what are the things I'm really enjoying or might think I want to enjoy? I'll do the research on it. I'll put ideas down under income. Research this, research that.
I want to interject here on a story really quick of how you coached one of your clients who was retiring from being an airline pilot to do speaking engagements on cruise ships and was audited, and you were able to get those expenses on the cruise ship written off because they did a narrative about that year of speaking on a cruise ship. Is that correct?
Well, that was part of it, but it wasn't the speaking on the cruise ship. We were speaking in Europe. And we came what we wanted to do, and I work with her, I'm still working with her, it's been 12 years. I'll say, what is it you want to have happen this year? And she said, I want to go to Europe and do the speaking for women airline pilots internationally. And it's going to be held in Spain and in Italy. But I also want to do a cruise. I haven't done the Riviera. So I said, okay, let's look into cruises and what other business do we have in Europe? And she said, well, I'd like to get in touch with some investments in Germany and in France. So what we did is we created a trip, and the two of us went. And we took the cruise ship Regent, the most expensive one there is that's so great, from Barcelona, Spain to the Riviera. And then we flew from France to Germany and then back to Italy and then home. And we got audited because we were writing off the cost of that Regent cruise until I was the one that represented her in the audit. And I said it would have cost us more to fly more places for the talks and stay in hotels and rent a car than it did to stay on that cruise line between Barcelona and Italy. And they bought it. Her $12,000, $15,000 write-off was all honored. So these are there's and I can tell you even smaller ones for small things, but it really works if you rationalize it and you write down the narrative. And I had a pure narrative on that. We had business cards from all the people we'd talked to and all the investments that she was interested in. So you have to do your homework. You have to back it. Anyway, thanks for that story, Elizabeth.
Thank you for that. I just thought it was so creative, and I wanted you all to get a sense of where my mother can take an idea and expand it. I thought it was brilliant, and I want to invite us all. After this, I will be sending out an email to you all with the replay if you want to listen to it again to take notes if you didn't get it all. But also your feedback, because we do want to grow this conversation in different theme classes, and your input would be very valuable on what you are interested in, your issues you're dealing with, and to get your feedback. So I am going to encourage you to answer our emails that we're going to send out, and that we're going to be doing this each month and really hone in.
One thing I didn't bring up that I want to, I have spent quite a bit of time with estate planning, and I have a full worksheet program on estate planning and the 7 documents that you should consider having in your estate plan. I teach the handwritten will. If you have nothing else, please have a medical power of attorney and a holographic will. If you want to know the difference between a will and a trust, I teach that. As a paralegal, I can give you reference to where you can find the forms for any of these. The 7 documents include a list of all your passwords, assets, bank accounts, where they're located, and also a letter to the people you love the most that are being left behind. So you have your powers of attorney, you have your will, you have your trust, you have your financial power of attorney, and you have your trust will, financial power of attorney, medical power of attorney. And then you have your letters to your trustee and your executor. Executor would be of your will, trustee would be of your trust. And I don't try to be, I'm not an attorney, I am a trained paralegal, but a lot of this you can do yourself or with a coach, which is what I offer. I've been doing this about 25 years. So if you want that as a session, I'm glad to offer that in one of our 6 sessions that we're structuring. Yeah. And I heartily please have at least a will and a medical power of attorney. And if you want to email Elizabeth, or when you get my email, I can send you forms if you want a form or a website where you can download a free one. You can go online and just look for will of form estate planning forms. They're free of charge. Just don't be without them. I can't tell you what I've been through with people that went through COVID and died without having an estate, and they had properties in 3 states, and I can't, it was so sad. So even if you have nothing other than a bank account or jewelry or personal things that you want to go somewhere, that's what your will's for. And in California, we now honor, and I think we have for 5 years, you can do a deed on a property to someone as long as it gets recorded in in that community. And the property will go to that person that you're deeding it to. It's a deed upon death. And it avoids probate, it avoids trust. You don't have to have a trust. So if you have a property or 2 properties, if you do a deed upon death, all you have to do to get the record changed, get the deed changed, is you have to show the death certificate. But you have to record that particular deed before you die to have it effective. But it will avoid probate. And I just want to say, please avoid probate. I don't care where you live. So all you're going to get is a bunch of trustee costs and judge costs and court costs, and there's no reason for it. There's so many things you can do. And if you have bank accounts, make sure you have a beneficiary on each one, because they don't tell you to do that. That way, if you happen to pass and somebody has to pay your bills, or say you're in the hospital, have a beneficiary on that account or a cosigner. I wanted to cover that, and that's important. I have all kinds of workshops on all of that. I have information and forms that you can get from me. So whatever works for you, um, just pay attention. My young people during COVID, I gave, and after the fire in 2018, before COVID, I taught a class in Butte County to kids that were juniors. My grandson was one of them, about how to get money for college. And we did the full breakdown on how you get you know how to open a checking account, you know what savings means, etc. And what I teach everybody, particularly young people, is if you save $300 to $350 a month from the time you're like 22, 23, and you just put that in a savings account every month, you will have $1 million by the time you're 65. It's the first thing I tell my kids. And so we can't do that as we get into adulthood, but we can certainly go in a little bit different direction. There are other ways, and I can go into investments, the rest of it, if you want a conversation on that.
I just want to say goodbye to Jill. Her battery's going dead, and we appreciate your voice in the circle. Thank you for joining us. We love you.
I want to thank everybody.
Yeah, I just really thank you, Dwight, for your voice too, and I hope you got some value out of it, Christine and Clarita. I hope that you'll give us your feedback, and I just want to ground us here at the end to just really focus in on a future possibility of visualizing yourself where you would love to be in a year, in 3 years, where you picture yourself as the best version of yourself or the best place you'd like to be. And really meditate today sometime with your eyes closed, really feeling like it's already happened. And what would you in that future self say to you today on one action you could take today to move forward closer to that place? And I think Nola's given us some great tools to ground it in the practical, but maybe your future self has something to say into your heart on what you need, where you need to come from today. That's my 2 cents in the mix right now on what to think about. I know that I'm working on that in myself. And I thank you, Nola, for all of your stories. I feel so empowered every time I hear your stories that you're my mother and that you're such a gift to the world. And the time is now. We need you, and we need your voice. So the world is ready for you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. Go ahead and any last parting words you have, Nola, to share with us?
It was a little too long for me, everybody. I'm going to have to condense it a bit. But I'm glad we did it.
We'll keep refining this, and thank you all for hanging in there all the way to the end and hearing these great stories. And just really think about your own stories. They're all valuable. We all need to hear them. So I hope that we all gather again next month. I will be getting in touch with each of you. Have a blessed, loving day today.
Yeah, enjoy your weekend.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon, I hope.
All right.
I'm going to stop the recording now.